So Vipera has been founded by myself and the current chief technical officer about 10 years ago. We didn't know anything about banking at all. We set up a company because we have seen an opportunity in the apps business, mobile apps business. So that was pretty old days, not exactly where the market is today. So Vipera technology at the very beginning was an application store. So a technology which allow enterprise to develop any sort of app and services and put that into the market. As you can imagine, that business now is a reality, but the reality is made possible by Apple when they launched the iPhone and then create the iTunes business and all the business that we know today. At the time that we started back in 2005, the market was very different. It was in the hands of the telecom operators. It was in the hand of the large manufacturers such as Nokia. So companies like us, although with a brilliant idea, with a fantastic technology, have been trying to crack that market, but without the device that iPhone demonstrated to be later on, we didn't manage to get it. Nevertheless, as a technology, we applied the technology in certain vertical sectors, and one of these sectors was banking. So we developed the first mobile banking application for a large bank in Malaysia called Maybank, by accident, to be honest. And that's where I started learning about banking and financial transactions, not as a banker, but as a technology, let's say, expert. And I have a background in technology. I'm Italian. I have been part of a team of 2 people that set up Yahoo back in '97 in Italy. Then I came up to Scandinavia and I set up another company in the sports field. That's why I was mentioning Juventus before, because then I ended up in London with a company called sports.com. We were buying rights from leagues, including the Premier League, and creating an internet product, and that was back in '98. So I've always been a bit of a pioneer in things, and I think that even now, what I will take you through is the presentation of Vipera, that is a player in financial services, and now there is a definition which is called fintech, which you have be familiar with. Maybe some of you have invested in some of the fintech company, and I hope that I will describe what does it mean for us and for the future. In a nutshell, so Vipera is listed on AIM since 2010. I will tell you the recent history. So as we became financial services provider, we have offices in London, Milan, and Dubai. We have a core development team of software engineers in Milan, but the headquarters of the company is here. Chief marketing officer, chief financial officer, myself from every other week we're here. The team altogether is about 80 people, 55 employees, 25 contractors. We use that model to be effective in project deployment. It's a company of 7 million revenue. Martin will tell us more the numbers about the interims in a bit. We do have 3 main areas of solutions: banking, payments, and customer engagement. I will try to describe you an example of those. We have customers almost everywhere in Europe and Middle East, well, a bit of Middle East and Asia. As I said, we started in Asia and then grew up the business into the Middle East, and only 3 years back we started in Europe. So we are now in the process of growing more and more in Europe, including the UK, whereby we hired salespeople relatively recently at the beginning of this year. A couple of words regarding the sector. Everybody, again, you may have read about it, so bear with me if I take you through quickly. The banks we know are under pressure. Telecom operators have been under pressure, and the business is completely changed recently. Banks is the only one that didn't really change, but is changing. Why is changing? For a number of different reasons. First of all, because banks became too big as a company in general to do things done properly. Second, because technology is there, and people like us, in particular the youth in particular, they're more and more used to have devices. So if 50 years ago we were building banks were opening up branches in front of a church because that is where the people was meeting every week. Today banks must be on Facebook because that is where the youth generation is going. So the model is completely changed. Branch must be shut down. So you can imagine the impact in terms of processes in management and all of that things. On top of that one, regulations is massively overwhelming for banks. So most of the large banks have a lot to do in terms of dealing with regulations and dealing with a gigantic infrastructure that cannot be really managed. So this is where the fintech sector comes in. You may have heard about fintech. London is one of the most interesting places right now globally for fintech. So there are a number of startups up in the roundabouts, Silicon roundabouts, all around that area that are trying to get their way through cracking the banking sector. Challenger banks is an example of that. So new formed startups that are pursuing to get the license from Central Bank of England. And by the way, some of them have already got the license. I give you a name. Starling is one example. The Central Bank of England is giving away 20 full banking licenses. The last one that they gave banking licenses away was 100 years ago. So now those companies like Starling, they got the license after 2 years process from Central Bank of England, are creating banks that has only one channel, the mobile. They don't have branches, they don't have online, they only have one channel, mobile. They are going after the youth generation or us as a customers with a proposition which must be extremely effective in terms of user experience, be on with us, where we stay when we are on Facebook and all of that things. Secure, obviously, because otherwise they wouldn't have got the license from the Central Bank of England. But they can operate at 1/10, much less than any other existing banks. So that is the challenge for the banks. So what Vipera does, and I mentioned some of the sector where those startups are coming out. So you can see advertisement everywhere of startups promoting P2P services, lending services, crowdfunding, banking. Now challenger banks promoting mobile banking solutions. So Vipera comes in this specific sector. We are not aiming to build a new bank, but we have the technology and all the functionalities which allows anyone to build a bank. So what we decided to do as a technology provider is to work for the existing established banks to help them, to support them in these transition periods and to embrace digital transformation. So basically, we define that as a fintegration solution. So we are trying to not close the barriers of the banks, either large and small ones, towards the fintech, but try to work with them, because this is an important aspect, in our opinion, for the future. What does it mean? It means that we have a number of applications. We have a proprietary technology, and on top of this technology, we have functionalities. So these are the top functionalities that we provide. So we have banks that use our technology for offering to you access to the bank accounts. We have banks that have payment features and card features, and I will show you an example of that one in a minute. And we have also engagement solution, which is a sort of value-added services that we have put on top of the banking business. This is a quick outlook of some of these functionalities: person-to-person money transfer, personal finance management, budgeting management. Why they choose Vipera, or what we believe we put into Vipera as a strength. Two things. First of all, we are experts in banking, meaning that we understand, in banking technology, meaning that we can deal with the IT and the complex security aspect of the backend. At the same time, building consumer products. So we have a team of user design experts, of graphic experts. We have an exclusive partnership with Experience Lab, which is a Serco company, for testing user experiences, which is one of the key aspects of a successful service. So that actually is an interesting combination which embraces all the two services. The second thing is that we are working hard to integrate more and more into the ecosystem. Our flagship partnerships are with MasterCard and Visa. and all the big networks. So what they offer functionalities. So we plug into those functionalities and we try to simplify the work of the banks to adopt those instead of building those themselves. And the third one is we promote and we offer a new business proposition to the banks. I will show you a use case where we're doing that and bringing new revenue to the bank in a different way. So let's go to the use cases. I don't know how many of you are using a mobile banking solution. Probably you're using an online banking solution. This means that your banking, most of the banking functionalities are in your device. Mashrek is the retail leading bank in the Middle East. We operate with them in the UAE, Qatar, and Egypt. It's not a big bank, it's 500,000 customers altogether, but 85% of their transactions flow either on mobile or on a website today, or ATMs. And Vipera is actually the technology that they use for running the whole things.
Have you ever wanted to manage your credit card with your smartphone? Card Control provides a simple and safe way to do exactly that. Card Control allows you to monitor one or several credit cards and shows you where your money goes. You can set daily, weekly and monthly spending limits, which can be easily modified on the go. The easy-to-read graphics instantly show you what you're spending in different categories, while push alerts notify you every time your cards are used. Card Control lets you enable or disable certain categories of merchants. You can also set budget limits for each category. When you're traveling, you can use location control to enable and disable your card for specific destinations. Card Control protects you from online fraud, allowing you to accept or block online credit card payments. Secure, contactless payments with your smartphone are also possible. Your purchasing history gives you access to exclusive discounts and offers. Card Control by Vipera.
One of the main customers for this application is Deutsche Bank in Germany. We have a special partnership with MasterCard. We provide MasterCard with this platform and this service, and Deutsche Bank is one of the first customers of MasterCard for this. And as you can imagine, we are working hard to try to get more customers on board of this platform. Another interesting use case that I want to present to you is this of an Italian bank. The bank is Banca Intesa. Is actually, they have their own technology and suppliers for mobile banking, online banking. It's all taken care by themselves. But what they did with us, we deployed what we call a customer engagement platform. What does it mean? We put in our technology and integrate that one together with their CRM and data analytics part. We integrated that with their existing channel, mobile and online. And now, starting July, we are giving merchants, the banks is giving merchants the possibility for those customers, for those of the 11 million customers they have in Italy that opt in into the service, they are giving option to the merchants to segment those customers based on their spending behavior and promote deals to those customers. I'll give you an example. I like to buy shoes, sports shoes every 6 months. If I do that with digital transaction, the banks know about it. If I am keen for deals and I tell the bank, yes, you can use my data as much as Google and the others are using my data without my name, just my payment transaction data, all this data aggregated allows the bank to understand what is called propensity model of spending. So they know that Marco is getting to the point that he's going to buy another pair of shoes. So that information, maybe not Marco, but this segment of customers. So this segment of customers can be now promoted for the merchant to sell their stuff. Basically, the bank is becoming a sort of a media channel. It's a marketing channel. Why they're doing that? Well, as you can imagine, the first worry for a bank is to protect their customer base. So they don't want to harass or be too much intrusive, right? So you're not going to expect deals like Groupon, right? You are going to expect, and that will be one of the key success of the success factor of the service. You're going to just receive the deals that you really want and need. First point number one. Point number two, they are monetizing their data. They have zillions of data. And this is a way to activate new revenue stream and pay for their non-performing branches. The business model around this one is that when there is a successful sale, the merchant pays a commission, like he pays commission to any marketing channel. And that commission is a revenue stream for the bank, and we share the revenue stream together with the bank. Okay? By the way, this service went live in July. We don't have any numbers in the projection for this year because we want to see the metrics, how the service will take up and the adoption first. So after that, we will see how we can project revenue on that one. And I can tell you that most of the banks are after sort of these things because that's the way for them to progress and make some money. The last case that I would like to present to you is that of a different sector. This is a large German electronic retailers called Media Market. They have a brand in Italy called Media World. So they have 150 large retail stores across the country. The big problems for those companies today is that we go into their shops, fancy shops, we talk to their sales team around, we look at the very latest Samsung TV screen, and then we fire up the phone and we buy it on Amazon because there is a best deal on Amazon. So those guys are showrooms at the end of the day. So they need to understand how they can interact with me before I go on Amazon and buy that one, by giving me the deal to buy with them, or by giving me an additional service like a subscription to Netflix for 3 months before I go to Amazon. And it cannot be a kind of general marketing promotion because otherwise that will also impact those that will go to buy from them anyway, right? So it must be very, very tailored. That's where the sort of company like Vipera comes in. We use proximity technology, which means, I know that sounds a bit absurd, but things that recognize that you are in a shop. So we can recognize that you are standing in front of this TV screen more than 5 minutes. That is probably the time to offer you a deal. These are the sort of things that Vipera is actually working with.
What sort of protection do you have over the IP that you've created in these solutions, these case studies you've just explained to us?
Sure. Thanks for the question. I would say that there is no patent on the technology. We tried once to get a patent in the US. The reality is that these sort of technologies many times are a result of a different numbers of pieces, right? So at the end of the day, you are ending up patenting a method. And when you patent a method, you just change a comma and it's a different patent. So there is no secret algorithm, to be honest. So there is no protection in that sense. The technology can be, in a way, replicated, that's for sure. So what makes the difference and what we are after is the thing that I put strength line. It's the thing that you combine the smart piece of technology together with the different things. For example, building business solutions on top of that. Strengthening partnership with the networks and getting to the networks before the others. We're not the only one. There are zillions of companies out there doing that. I have to be very clear. We're not Google. We are a company that is, hardworking to get things done, but is doing okay. And when we are out there and we deliver Salesforce in new territory, we can bring in new customers. So it works.
Can the banks use a plug and play methodology and therefore use you for
Yes.
some of these solutions, but somebody else for
Absolutely,
other solutions?
The answer is yes, not all of those. But when it comes, for example, to the Deutsche Bank service that you've seen, one recorded also from the BBC, that one is an offer that we have, allow me for another technical word, in the cloud. So that is accessible to any bank as a plug-and-play solution. And for us, after having worked on Deutsche Bank case and with MasterCard, is now the time to push MasterCard to bring more banks on board in a plug-and-play fashion.
In terms of your development model, are you investing ahead of the curve in your solutions and then taking them to market, or are you actually working with specific banks and developing that and then reselling?
Good question. We would like to be ahead of the curve of the market. The reality is that the speed that our customers are moving at a global level doesn't allow us to do that. So that's always the balance between how much money you want to put in product development, capital expenditure. Martin will elaborate on that one. Monetize at a write-off of 250 million pounds in product assets. 250 million pounds of write-off. We have a 3 million value of the asset in the balance sheet. You can spend money. You can raise money, you can spend money. But, the market is always a bit slower in this case to adopt it. So I think that we are still at the stage that we are developing the product. So we are spending roughly 500,000 every year in product development, but we're reacting more to market demands. We want to get to the stage where we can also be a bit more proactive ourselves.
So you've got a big wave of development being forced on the banks through PSD2. So how would you actually take advantage of that opportunity?
We've been reflecting and extensively on that subject. I don't know, for all of you, PSD2 is in a nutshell is a payment service directive number 2. So it's a directive from the European Community, which I believe will affect also the UK, at least for the next 2 years, whereby basically the banks by 2018 will be forced to give access to my bank accounts to third parties. What does it mean? It means that Tesco can have my, if I tell Tesco, please go and get the payment from my bank accounts, they have a technical means to access my bank and pull out the money. It's a kind of a revolution in that way, because basically they are disintermediating the card schemes. They are disintermediating many of the. That's why there is some reactions in the industry. For example, MasterCard acquired Vocalink, 1 billion acquisitions in the UK. So what Vipera is doing there? We have made a partnership with an interesting startups in the US. It's called Token. They are very expert in PSD2, because PSD2 is all about, at least from our perspective, is all about to have the right and secure technology to bring easily into the bank to open up those access. What we are doing is we're building solution on top of that one for the banks. But we cannot be everywhere. That's one of the other aspects. As I was going through the services, I think we are already a bit everywhere, because there is mobile banking, which per se can be a business. There is the retail part so to be honest, yes, we are a bit everywhere, which on one side is good because it helps you to grow and understand which is the one to focus on. But I believe we are also very close to the point that we can start focusing and scaling the business at a completely different speed.
I get the feeling from what you've described that you're dealing with large banks and unique customers who are, quite big compared to the company, and also, you have to build a relationship with them to be able to trust you. What's the average lead time that you're talking to them before you actually get any sort of confirmed order or contract?
Yeah, the lead time with large customers is anything between 12 to 18 months. The one with tier 2 and tier 3 is more like in the 3 to 6 months. You're absolutely right. This is not a business that you just deploy a new salespeople in Germany and you get customers. It's not like that. We raised money back in May last year. We brought in some institutional investors. Martin will elaborate on that. The reason of that fundraising was to put more effort into the sales team. What we did, for example, we hired people in Germany, in France, in Spain, in the UK. But what these guys are doing are primarily getting the company known. So go there and get the company known and known and known as much as possible. At the same time, for example, we hired a gentleman whose name is Jeremy Nichols, who joined the board in February. And Jeremy was the head of mobile at Visa, and before Visa Europe. And before that, he was a top executive at MasterCard. So Jeremy is helping us to scale up the relationship in that sense, because our success at the end can flow through those channel partners. They have all the network and the connection established. We can just plug in our services as MasterCard, as it happened with Deutsche Bank.
So I guess you would say the key to it, even though we're a small company, is that you'd have good relationships in the larger companies and build on that.
Absolutely.
So do you partner with anyone externally, or do you try and do all this yourself?
In terms of sales or in terms of development?
Yeah, in sales.
No, in sales, absolutely externally. Well, we have an internal force, as I said, but the task for this internal force is, on the one side, to promote the company. On the other side is to develop partnership relationships with channel partners, as we call them.
Okay, thank you. And I'm glad you mentioned Jeremy. He bought shares, I see, yesterday.
Yeah, he just bought shares yesterday. It took a while for him, since February, but he bought shares yesterday.
You mentioned that you revenue share on one of your product ranges.
Yep.
What proportion of your total revenue is based on revenue sharing?
I will hand over to Martin. If there is any more question on product, because that is actually addressed within the financial presentation, if you're okay.
Just before you hand over, could you explain to me, I'm still not quite understanding how you got a very good contract with Deutsche Bank. It seems to me that it's a personal relationship you're relying on. You're getting yourself known. Is that it? And if it is that, in what way are you different from the other companies that are in your rather crowded market? So
You mean for an ex-customer or for Deutsche Bank itself?
both, really, but particularly for the next customer.
Yep. Let me put this way. We signed Deutsche Bank 2 years ago, and it was through MasterCard. In the meantime, we didn't sign another Deutsche Bank, so it's not easy to sign the like of Deutsche Bank. I agree. It's all about having the right relationships, building the right, channel partners. So that's why you can see a bit of a strategy here that going towards the large banks with a niche offering must be unique. So if you can do that uniquely, why Deutsche Bank chose us? Maybe that answered the question. They could have done internally. They have a 1 billion spending in IT every year. But the internal team couldn't really come up with a solution after 4 years, or after 2 years, because they're too busy in so many other things. Now that the payment and card division being exposed by MasterCard saying, I have the solution to your problem. There is this little company that has a ready-to-go solution. Do you want it? They say, yes, I want it. And they came on board. So that is the way that works for us in terms of relationship. If we pretend to go into the bank like RBS and try to deploy our technology to, into all their streams, that will not be possible. I have to be very realistic. We are not IBM. But we can convince the like of IBM that certain aspects of our technology that are unique can be deployed by them. That is actually where we are at the moment.
If you think about the last couple of pitches or business development pieces you've done that you've not won, what were the reasons given to you by the clients? Was it that they wanted to do it themselves, or there was a competitor, or they just...
A very, very clear example in the Netherlands. We have a channel partner called Equens. Is one of the largest processor, well, definitely the largest in the Dutch market and East Europe. They brought us into a tender for ABN AMRO. There was a tender for a mobile wallet platform and payment solution. Unfortunately, Equens have been acquired by Worldline. And at the time of signing the deal, Worldline saying, hang on a second, we also have this solution. We are French and we want to deploy it. Example. Another example, always in the Netherlands, always with Equens. We were in Rabobank. We were about to sign the deal. And the IT of the bank said, no, I'm sure that we can do it as well. So competition for us most of the times comes from internal IT of the banks. And that's again why if you focus on emerging territories, that is much less of a problem. And in here, we have to differentiate ourselves on being, let's say, smart with solutions that are very simple and cheap, like the one that we described for Deutsche Bank. Or the Intesa one. That is not something that the IT players can do, because that is merging, the ability to deal with merchants, to deal with data analytics, is a mix of everything that not all the companies can do.
How do you divide cost internally when you look at an app like the Deutsche one and say, actually, we got away with that, it only costs 100,000 to develop, say, I'm just comparing with the £1 billion that Deutsche Bank are spending. So of your suite of apps, of which some get taken up and some don't, if you actually look at the development cost, it might appear to be relatively low.
It is relatively low.
So my second question is, does Deutsche know that, and does that affect what you can charge for it?
That's a fantastic question, because that is the key problem we are having with Deutsche Bank at the moment. What happened there is that the card and payment division has been extremely successful to deploy this service with us, because overall, between us and MasterCard, it costed them nothing. If you compare that one with the IT, who has developed the mobile banking and is promoting the mobile banking, is massively far cheaper. So now Deutsche Bank, who has now about 70,000, I think 60,000 customers, they have, and without any marketing, they have a much more, let's say, large user base to target, but they're not doing that because there are some internal politics for the reason that you just said.
It's not just that. Even if they rolled it out across everyone, if they took a punt and said, you probably only spent £500,000 developing this, we're just not going to pay you that much for it.
So you mean we or they?
They trying to take a guess at how much it actually cost you to develop it.
Well, that's part of it. Well, that is part of the, I would say, the normal negotiation process when they try to guess, what those sort of things. In the case of Deutsche Bank, to be very honest, because there were business people acquiring the service, they were much more focusing on the outcomes of the service, not really, what it takes to develop it, which technology are you using. That was all guaranteed by having MasterCard in the picture. I give you an example. If you are in Germany today, and we've seen the numbers, all those that download this app, the first thing they do, they log the card for all the sort of payments, and they unload the card only at the time that they use the payment. That is a real-time thing. I mean, you can do that real-time. Okay. You lose the card. You normally call, all scary the customer assistance. And what they do is they stop the card and they start the process of reissuing a new card, which normally costs you another £20, and is a long process for the banks and all of that one. And maybe your card was just under the bed. So, what happened now, and we see the numbers, you don't find the card, you load the card. Maybe the day after, you look around if you find the card. If you find the card, it doesn't cost you anything. And by the way, there is now a wave of additional services which are coming on top of these simple functionalities of locking. Example, parental control. We're developing and studying a product with some of the banks whereby you can give cards to children and be in control of the card. So the card today doesn't work on iTunes because you didn't do your homework.
So highlights, I think the first highlight you'll see on the list there is revenue, because we're at a point where our key objective is to increase our revenue. And so if you compare first half revenue with this time last year, it's up 43%. However, I would be very careful to say that you've already heard that there's a long sales cycle, and that means that winning orders, winning contract can be quite lumpy. And also is the fact that reaching completion to the point where a deployment is billable and revenue recognizable is also lumpy. So what I'm going to say to you is that please don't then expect that the whole of 2016 is going to be 43% up on the whole of 2015. It isn't. I don't think, well, I mean, I'm delighted if it was, but I don't think it would be. What I would say is that having had quite a strong first half, it has greatly increased our confidence that we're going to meet the targets which we have set ourselves and hinted to the market for the year. So that's the first point. The operating loss was €400,000. That is absolutely what we had been budgeted for. I'm sure you've guessed we're at the point where we're out there spending money, investing in the future, and we raised money last year specifically to invest in additional sales resource, and good salespeople are expensive, and with a long sales cycle, that means quite an investment. So yes, we're losing money, but yes, we also feel we're investing in our future there. And on the last point on there, I guess, is the product development continues. So we try, at a house style, we try not to capitalize too many things. We are called by IFRS to be prudent and sensible about how much you do capitalize, but also one making a statement to customers that you're also continuing to invest in your product, which is quite important. I think before I talk about this slide, I think it would be helpful if I elaborate on the business models which we have. There's a range of them, and as you can imagine, it ranges from, it's great, we do some consultancy work. We have a business segment which does consultancy, specializing in data, complex data, and that is obviously on a per diem basis. The majority of our business, the great majority of our business, is fairly traditional software sales, in the sense that a customer is going to pay you a software license and a deployment fee, and once we've deployed it, then they'll be paying us software maintenance thereafter. But that's not the universal case. That, if you like, is the classic case. It will apply when the stakeholder at the client is probably the IT department. However, if the stakeholder at the client is perhaps, say, a customer service department, they're buying a service from us, then their budget is much more geared up towards paying you for a service, perhaps on a per card, per user basis. So we talked about Deutsche Bank. They pay us so much per card per year, and therefore you're getting transactional revenue. So let me talk about what we've got up here. Second line, we've got the consultancy revenue I mentioned. That is steady, it's growing steadily, but it isn't going to take off like a rocket because it's a function of how many people you have. The biggest part and the core business we have is our license, project and deployment fees. And I haven't split those out between what is license fee and what is deployment, because it's quite often an artificial split, which is a function of what the client budget is. You know, a client may say, well, we've got a plenty of budget for software, but not for deployment, or vice versa. So rather than have a slightly false split, I just merged the two. But the key point there, it is growing strongly, and that's the number we aim to grow as well. You can see there transactional revenue is what Marco alluded to. Primarily that is revenue from card control product. So that is where people are paying us so much per card user per year. And then at the bottom you got, if like, traditional support and maintenance charges. So the bottom two, the transactional and the support and maintenance charges, are what an analyst would typically call recurring revenue. And that's growing for us over time, and obviously we want it to grow it as fast as we can. But as well as recurring revenue, we have a very large element of what I call repeat revenue. And by repeat revenue, I mean an existing customer who has bought one set of functionality from us and then come back for more. And they say, a bit like adding a Meccano set, they want to add more and more functionality to what they have from us. And so that's what I call repeat revenue. So putting that into a graph, I guess the message from that graph is you can see that it is a bit lumpy. It does go up and down, but we're on a trend that is dragging it up, and we're making good progress on that. On the balance sheet, I think there are several messages on the balance sheet. First of all, the cash balance with 3 million in the bank, and that is good. It means we can be braver about our expenditure. Although I think it's fair to say that Marco and I are both averse to spending money, we know we've got to be brave and get out there and spend it. And that is what our shareholders have asked us to do, to invest in the future. Trade and other receivables is another big number in there. So we have a lot of customers in the Middle East and in Italy, and the business style in both those centres is to pay perhaps on 90 to 120 days. So that is why receivables are quite large in relation to our turnover. And indeed, you'll also see a small line borrowings there, and that is where, ironically, we factor invoices to certain Italian banks in order to get some cash up front, and that smooths out our cash flow in Italy. And then at the top of the balance sheet, you can see the goodwill. The goodwill, I don't think we elaborate on this. So at the end of 2013, oh yeah, gosh, years fly by. At the end of 2013, we were looking around as to how to grow our headcount rapidly, because we were finding a very rapid increase in numbers of people. And our business model in terms of people is to have a sort of home team of engineers, but also supplement that with contractors, because that gives you flexibility of workload. And in order to grow our staff very rapidly, what we did is we bought our largest outside contractor. We actually bought them and made them a subsidiary. And so that's the goodwill that goes with that. And in the intangible assets are the accumulated capitalization of product development. I thought I'd say something about our shareholders and our capital base. So over the years, in total, we've raised just under 10 million euros still. I kind of say, I think I'm kind of proud of that, because you come across some of these new fintech companies who are raising 20, 30, 40 million bucks. And there's us. I think we've come a long way on 10 million euros. The next message from that slide is to tell you that today, roughly just over half the company is owned by management and the home team. You can also see a couple of institutional investors. There's Octopus and Myton, our two institutional shareholders. We have a range of customers and customer sizes. So the top top five are quite significant customers to us. They're probably all close to €1 million a year. And we've been focusing on growing the amount of money we get from them. So we can tell you that in the first half of this year, all of those important customers either increased or maintained their spend with us. And also this is very qualitative, but because you look at the pipeline, you look at the sort of quality of conversations you're having with customers, we feel we can safely say that we're getting a good return from all those people we took on next year to augment the sales force that is producing results, and tangible results in terms of conversations and who you speak to and at what level within a bank. The customer engagement revenue has started during the year, so this is what Marco was talking about with the customer engagement solution. We're starting to get revenue from that. And we feel we have quite a strong pipeline. The thing about a strong pipeline is you don't know when it's going to become, if you like, bookable, to use a semiconductor phrase, and nor do you know exactly when it's going to become billable. But boy, it's sure nice to see when you've got it. So that's coming through. And so we've got a comment about where are we today in terms of 2016 revenue, and we can look what we build, what we've got signed and committed. That's about 6 million euros, and that's in the context of just under 7 million euros of revenue last year. We've got another quarter, 3 months to go now, 4 months to go. We've got quite a lot of qualified pipeline, and it's a case of how quickly we can and how much of that we can convert into firm orders. There's a slide here. We're telling you a bit about the sort of customers we're having and who we're talking to, who's in the pipeline, what sort of banks we're talking to, and this is giving you an indication of who they are, but also where are they. So we have a sales presence in Italy, obviously, the Middle East, Germany, United Kingdom, but there are some other banks out there, some people in Brazil, there's Japan, there's even this wonderful thing, Aruba. If ever you've been to a holiday in South America, you may have stopped off at Aruba en route. It's an island, but there we go, they're the bank that we've been introduced. And so some of these banks which are much further away that we can reach, however, channel partners and people we're talking to work with us, they do reach them, and therefore, so when Marco is talking about channel partners, he's really making the point that not only are they much bigger companies with much better relationships than we have with banks, but also on a much more far-flung basis across the world. So I think that covers all the numbers side. I'll ask you if you have any questions.
Hi. Almost half your revenue's coming from the consulting business, which I think is primarily based in Italy and primarily focusing on the banking sector.
Yes, yes.
Is that a concern based upon the state of the Italian banking sector right now?
I have to admit I hadn't looked at it like that. I think when banks are in trouble, sometimes they buy in more advice. I mean, I suppose that's a bit of a glib answer. I guess the true answer is we haven't seen it yet. We have seen actually that business segment is performing more strongly than they were last year.
Can I also answer with another addition? Last year, consulting grew 7%, all the rest grew 45%. So consulting is an interesting business for us because came with the acquisition that we did. Is a consulting in data analytics and big data particularly, which is helping us to understand how it works. But the growth of the company is not in consulting, so it's becoming less of a problem.
Yeah, I mean, you did say that 43% was probably, you used the word lumpy, so I think to draw that as a comparison is perhaps a bit unfair, but I mean, what would you look to leverage that big data analytics into the UK? Because I know there's a lot of work there. So
without pretending to really do that, obviously is the plan, right? So as we said, that business came through an acquisition. We have it, so we keep it. We are just specializing more and more the people into this specific sector of big data and analytics, because as you go into the Intesa deal that we've been discussing, we are not doing the analytics there. That is coming from their CRM. But we have been fighting because the first outcome for the CRM was, guys, we can give you a fantastic segment. These are the males and these are the females. And I said, what are you talking about? We're talking about sophisticated segmentation. We want to know those customers that don't go to this specific merchant or may go to this merchant only once a time and they go to all their competitors for the rest of their life. So it's sophistication, right? So we think that there is an interesting use of that one. Will we be able to export it as a consulting business elsewhere? I cannot really tell you. Obviously, we will use the knowledge, right? But it's not exactly the business that we are focusing at the moment.
Of the 9.9 million euros, what was raised at what prices? And then my second question is going to be, of the share register, how many are in the money?
Okay. I would say, okay, so I think you'd have to distinguish between founders. Well, I tell you what, I mean, the thing is, founders have put a lot, they have put hard cash. It wasn't just a case of I get founder shares for free. It was a case of putting in some initial capital to get the company going, and it had also been a case of putting your hand in your pocket to follow through. And so I would, €500,000 for personally? I mean, yeah.
Of the 9.9, they say phase one where we were not listed, I think the total was about 3.5 million before we got listed. And that 3.5 million came from myself and from a business angel whose name is Perrin that you find as a top shareholder. So he's still with us. He's a non-executive director, business angel from Norway. We grew up the business with them. Then the other 6 million, which has been raised in the market, I leave Martin.
So if you said that all of that initial money was roughly in at 3p, then when I will tell you, by the way, that Vipera started off as a Swiss company. The chief technology officer is Swiss, and the company was based in Switzerland. And then in 2010, it reversed into a London shell, and therefore became Vipera PLC. And we did a small placing, and we raised £1 million at 8.5 back in 2010. We raised, I suppose, in total about another £500,000 at 5p, and then we did 2.5 at 4.5. Sorry, you've got a complete mix, by the way, of pence and pounds raised in the London market and euros on our balance sheet. I'm sorry about that. We're called to use euros as our reporting currency.
Are you able to say anything about your sort of current cash burn per month?
I think the answer is we're careful about it. It's not something we lose sleep over at the moment because we are well capitalized, and it is just the level of operating expenses is something which we consciously make a decision about. Do we hunker down, cut costs, and go for making a profit? And that is one route. Or, and don't get me wrong, obviously our objective is to be profitable, but on that journey, we are finding that there are opportunities out there which, frankly, shareholders have given us money to go out and grab. Well, go out and grab them. And if that means spending money which goes through the P&L, and therefore you report a loss, so be it. I think that's probably a bit more of if I may say so, an American approach to building a business than an English one. And it certainly calls for you to be, for us to be braver about it, because it's never comfortable to be losing money. Of course not. But we feel in control of the situation. I'll put it that way.
You said you followed a traditional license sale model. And that's very lumpy. Is there any intention to move towards software as a service to give a more regular income profile?
Well, I think the answer is yes. We would love to move to a point where you're selling a service that they're paying you, per user or per month on all that. There are two aspects for that, actually. First of all, you can't force a customer to go to something. And, if that's the way their budget is structured, we're cool to go with it. The second thing is that when you have a customer who said, actually, they would quite like to work with us on a per-user basis, what's actually happening for us is that we're pushing revenue out into the future. In those situations, we might have a much smaller, very small, humble deployment fee, but we have the promise of much more revenue later. And the blessing is that we have the capital now to do that, to say, fine, we're okay, that's what your budget has, that's what we'll do. Do you want to add to that, Marco?
I just wanted to add on this one that yes, the plan is to try to get to some more stable and sort of recurring business. As you can see, as I was saying before, we are a bit all over the places. So software licensing for mobile banking, but we have a per user fee from Deutsche Bank, and we have a commission fee from Bank Intesa. So where the company is right now is that we deployed it. We want just to see the metrics and see how that works. Can we get another 10 banks similar to Deutsche Bank? We have an interesting business case going after this per user service, which is 80% profitability. Can we see the metrics coming through Intesa for the merchant commission? Same story. In the meantime, we don't say no to deployment phase. That's where we are actually. But yes, the plan is to try to get more towards. And when you say software as a service, we are a product. We have a product. It's an enabling technology. We license this also. For example, in Thailand, we are not deploying in Thailand. We have a customer there. We have a partner there who is a large system integrator. Is licensing the technology and is building solutions for the market. They deploy 2 banks, and they gave us €1 million whatsoever. So it works as a model. But we're not really pursuing that one right now because we don't think that we have such a special let's say, enabling product that we can just sit here and ship CD-ROMs around. So it's not Oracle, it's not something like that one. So we have to keep building on solutions and functionalities. That is, the reality of the business. So, as I said, it's an interesting business. It's a very interesting sector. It's not Oracle. It's not Google. But as we can see that there are opportunities in developing a platform business, we will definitely be on that sort.
One other question. You mentioned that a lot of your marketing is done through your channel partners. Clearly, MasterCard seems to be one of those. They must have 30 people trying to offer the same services as you are offering. How does that work for you?
That's why we deployed Deutschland 2 years ago, and we didn't deploy any customers in the meantime, right? So through them, because it takes time. And what happened to us, for example, is that although we have been promoting towards all the MasterCards in Europe, going to the UK here, only when Jeremy Nichols came on board, the picture changed, because Jeremy took us to the right relationships, and then things are changing. So now we are talking to Mark Barnett, who is the head of MasterCard in the UK, and things are moving differently.
Yeah, I'm trying to establish in my own mind how scalable this business is. And you said that your shareholders want you to invest in taking the opportunities in front of you. That's why you're not profitable. Can you give us a flavour of what your sort of plans are over the next 3 years? I mean, what sort of size is this business going to be?
You want to take that or try to? Just comment on it. Yeah, well, I think our target for the next few years is to have more repeatable product, because then there's much higher gross margins. Secondly, it's more scalable. So for example, we've been putting more focus on to what extent can we make it a cloud delivery service? Because and also the payment directive is helping us enormously, because that links to a much more an easier integration, and that means we can deploy much more rapidly to people. You look at these where they are, the fact that a customer is overseas doesn't bother us particularly. So in terms of scaling up, I think there are two things. Getting more people, more technical people, is not a major problem. I mean, it's a problem getting the right people, but it's not holding us back as a company, shall we say. What is the point is just getting more and more customers in there. If we had, if a partner came to us and said, "We've got 10 banks to deploy next year, could you do it?" We'd gulp, but we'd say yes, because we can go and find the resources to actually deliver on that.
Thank you very much, Marco and Martin, and look forward to chatting to you over dinner as well. Thank you.